Hello everybody, this is Manu S and welcome to another Eternal news video. We received a massive spoiler dump last night, way bigger than the last two spoiler dumps, at least like twice as big. So let's get to it. Time to review them all. The first spoiler we received was called a Spirent. This is actually looking really great. A 1/1 for 1, nothing special. Overwhelm is a neat bonus, but Life Force is where the card really starts to shine. So basically, every time you gain health, this guy gets +1/+1 permanently, which makes this easily one of the best 1-drops in the game, as long as there's enough good support for it. But yeah, all in all, alone the line of like Cult Aspire turn 1 and turn 2 Varus Favor gives you a 1-power 2/2 Overwhelm, which can grow further, which is way better than say a Knife Jack, which is a 2/2 for 1 without Overwhelm that can't grow and has a downside. And yeah, this guy is stunningly good, I think. This is a premium 1-drop, and it seems like they actually go for a more aggressive approach with the Life Force, which I didn't expect. Like, Life Force looked more like a defensive controlling ability to me so far, but this card makes it clear that they very much have the intention of combining life gain with aggression. And yeah, I love this card. This card is great. Alright, next card. Next we have a new weapon. It's called Peacekeepers Broad. Costs 4, gives +3/+2. A bit worse than Hammer of Might. Also worth noting is it costs triple green, so it's gonna be really hard to support unless you are very heavy in Justice. But we get a different summon ability than Hammer of Might. We get to stun an enemy unit for turn. So this is some really sweet tempo swing. Basically generates more of a tempo swing than Hammer of Might, but less value. Definitely an interesting and solid weapon. We'll have to see how it plays out, because there's the competition of Hammer of Might, like I said, and the new Valkyrie 4-drop and Rune Hammer and so on. There's a bunch of 4-drop options now, and the cost is pretty restrictive. But it's definitely an interesting constructed level card to keep in mind. Next we have Torgov Icecap Trader, another really sweet card, I would say. Finally, Primal gets a good constructed power level 4-drop, something the faction has been missing. And yeah, a 4/5 for 4 is pretty decent in Primal, I would say. The nice thing is its text. First of all, whenever you manage to hit the opponent with it, you get to loot, which means draw a card and then discard a card. And once you have 15 or more cards in your void, he turns into a 7/8. Because he gets +3/+3 for as long as you have 15 or more cards in your void. So in the long run, he becomes a really big threat. So he scales kind of nicely into the late game and generates some value, gives you some card selection, some quality advantage basically from his on-hit trigger. So overall, a rock solid card, nothing super impressive, but a very solid and nice mid-range or aggressive Primal 4-drop. I like it. Next we have Cerso's Meddling. Basically a pretty bad polymorph. Turns into a 2/2 instead of a 1/1 and costs 6 just to be a fast spell. I think this card is pretty terrible. Even in limited it's gonna be pretty bad. This card is just very, very bad, I think. I don't get why it costs 6. I mean, it could have easily cost like 4 comparable to polymorph, then you get worse stats and get fast spell for 1 power more. That would have made sense, but twice the cost of polymorph just to be a fast spell and give them a bigger unit is just ridiculously bad. And polymorph is already only okay in limited. This card is just bad in every perceivable way, in my opinion. Next we have another 1-drop, Brash Shorthorn, basically a 1 power 2/1 with a minor upside. since it's a Minotaur, and we just saw in the last video that we get some Minotaur tribal synergies. The new Minotaur 4-drop will turn this into a 4-1, which is pretty sweet, so keep in mind the fact that it's a Minotaur is relevant. Other than that, it's just a 1 power 2-1 vanilla, which is still decent because Shadow was lacking some more aggressive 1-drops. We only had 2, one of them was kind of badish, and now we got another one that also synergizes with new cards, so that's sweet. Next we have Hidden Shiv. Nothing fancy here, just a weapon that gives +1/+0 for 1 and has warp. I think all in all, not very good. I mean, it's sort of free, but it's also super low impact, and every time you draw this without warping it, you're kind of gonna feel really sad. So I don't think it's usually gonna be worth it to put it in your deck unless you have some severe synergies with weapons. And the same probably goes for limited. Not impressed by it. Next we have Umbran Thirster, another kind of bad card in my opinion. It's a 5 power 2/4, which is already very small for a 5-drop, and with Life Force it gets +1 attack and flying. It seems to get it permanently, judging from the wording, no end of turn or anything, and therefore can also can get it repeatedly, but it can't get flying repeatedly. But yeah, every time you gain health it grows, it turns into a 3/4 flyer, then a 4/4 flyer, 5/4 flyer, and so on, which is okayish, but all in all not good enough, I think. It's just maybe okayish in limited, but in constructed the card is just way too slow, way too weak. Next we have Sparring Partner. I kinda like this card. It's very balanced and very like medium. It's not super powerful or super weak, but it is decent. We basically get 3/3 in stats for 2, with the downside of having to mentor a unit, but all in all this is pretty nice, and I can very well see this seeing play. It's just overall a decent card, I would say, and in limited it's probably even one of the more premium commons, I would assume. So yeah, I like the card. Very simple design, very balanced, but interesting and decent. Next we have Yeti Snow Trucker, another Yeti 2-drop in addition to the Yeti's to the Snowball Yeti that we already have. This one has Reckless, which is definitely a downside, but it virtually is a 3/2 as long as it hits the opponent, basically. Like, we always get 1 damage to the opponent, and then 2 either to the opponent or to the blocker, which is decent. This might be interesting alongside Champion of Fury, if the deck ends up being Yeti-centric enough, like if you play Wump, because playing this into a Wump is pretty decent. Then you suddenly have a 3/3 that also pings the opponent for 1. We'll have to see, but the Reckless is a potential major problem, because let's imagine you're on the draw, the opponent drops, say, a Seraph on turn 3, and then we basically can't even like Wump to save him. If we just Wump on turn 3, then the Snow Trucker is just gonna run himself dead in Seraph, so I don't see this to very likely make it into constructed decks. And in limited it probably has similar issues. Reckless on a small unit is usually, on a small non-evasive unit, is a very big downside, so I'm highly skeptical of how useful this Yeti is gonna be. Next we have Alluring Amber. This is a really interesting one. First of all, it costs 1, so it's a 1/1 flying charge for 1. Nothing fancy, but it costs 2 fire and 2 requires 2 fire and 2 time influence, which usually lets you play it on turn 2 the earliest if you have a double dual land draw, and otherwise anywhere between turn 2 and turn 4 usually, or sometimes later if you can't hit the influence. The warp makes it a bit better, but yeah, all in all I think the card is just like, for now at least, too innocuous, too low impact, to even like care about the warp, because you still don't get a lot and the restrictions on the cost are really high. Maybe there will be some stuff that makes this more appealing and better, but for now I'm not excited about the card. But it's interesting to see like how they use a separation of power and influence to sort of balance cards and make do things like this. Next we have Swear Vengeance, basically 1 power fast spell that gives one of your units revenge. Nothing very impressive, since revenge is like kind of weak to begin with, given that it ends up anywhere in the top 10 cards, and you don't really want to invest a card for that, because ultimately you're more or less just having a super delayed black cantrip, because you just get the unit back. It's like a really bad dark return sort of that can give you some tempo advantage, but yeah, it's just so many ifs and so speculative and so unreliable that I don't see this card being good anywhere in Constructed or Limited, really. Next we have Hate Cleaver, another Life Force card, this time a Relic Weapon. So this the next Shadow Relic Weapon. We don't have a lot of those yet. This one is kind of interesting. It's pretty weak for a 4-drop Relic Weapon at 3/2. So you would have to trigger the Life Force the turn you play the Hate Cleaver once at least to make it worthwhile, but then you get a 4/3, so that's decent. And if you can trigger it multiple times or protect it and then keep triggering it, it can take over a board and can be pretty impressive. But I'm skeptical about this. There's still a lot of ifs and a lot of things you need to make work, but it's a card that could be interesting and good and constructed, and definitely in Limited. Alright, next we have Forgotten Find. That's an interesting one. Play 2 power cards from your void depleted, so this is sort of like a weird ramp spell if you can manage to get power into your void, which is not that easy because so far there are not a lot of good ways to get power into your void. There are cards like Herald Song or Blind Storyteller, but they are all sort of slow and expensive, so we'll have to see. But yeah, this is a card that probably the more cards we see, the bigger the game gets, the more powerful and more interesting it's gonna become. Because imagine if you find a way to put 2 power cards in your void on turn 1 and play this on turn 2, that would be incredible, for example. But so far we are pretty far from that, but it's definitely an interesting card and an interesting design to keep an eye on. Next we have Workshop Forge, another relic, a Praxis relic. It has warp itself, and all the warp cards on top of your deck cost 2 less, so it reduces the warping of cards, not the regular playing of cards, and makes it easier and more likely that you can actually warp stuff. Cards that reduce cost on free mechanics like warp and generally drastically reduce costs on cards by like 2 in this case, especially multiples of these, can be very powerful. So in a vacuum this card is not worth it, I would say, but it's very possible that this could be broken. Like, this is the type of card that either is bad and doesn't do anything relevant, or gets broken and then is just completely busted and creates some degenerate deck that does crazy powerful stuff. And this is definitely an interesting thing to experiment with and try to break it. Next we have Maelstrom Bell. Once per turn you can pay 2 to increase the damage of the top damaging spell of your deck by 1. This card seems really bad to me. You have to invest 2 and then keep investing 2 power a turn for speculative value enhancing damage spells on top of on the top from your deck till you draw them, and it's just super slow, and the effect that you generate is also really small, really low impact. I think the card is terrible, to be honest, in any format really. Next we have Shard of the Spire, another relic, this time Justice. When you play a unit, its attack and health becomes the higher of the two. Which is kind of interesting. I mean, this card is kind of hard to judge and I would have to like try it a bit. This is a bit like sort of obelisk like in the sense that it enhances your units. Like for example, imagine play this on turn 4 and then on turn 5 you play a Lumen Defender. Suddenly your Lumen Defender gets +4/+0 from Shard of the Spire because it turns into a 5/5. Or you play a Seraph and it turns into a 4/4, getting +1/+0 from the shard and so on. So this might have some interesting potential. The problem is that costing 4 means that quite a bunch of your stuff will be played beforehand, but for example turning your combo healers into 3 power 5/5s, for example, and so on is pretty interesting. Also, to be fair, I'm not even sure if it works on combo healer, because it might be that it just checks for like base base attack and health, and that the +3 buff from the healer does not count for this and it doesn't even become a 5/5, so that's something that's worth keeping in mind. But yeah, it's an interesting card that might be worth building around in like a sort of defensive, value-oriented mid-range deck with a lot of the better like high health units and or potentially high attack, low health units, and then use this to turn these guys into offense and eventually turn on your opponent. But yeah, it's a lot of speculation, but it's a card that could be interesting. Not sure how good it's gonna be and how I feel about it without having tried it. And last but not least, we have a very sweet and unspectacular 2-drop. We get a 3/2 for 2, which is very decent, and on top of it, every time Oasis Seeker attacks you gain 1 health, aka triggers Life Force, which is a pretty big deal with cards like the 1-drop that we saw, the weapon that we saw and stuff. Having ways to repeatedly trigger Life Force without having to spend power is gonna be very good, and this guy is likely gonna be essential to this, together with the lifesteal 3-drop ambush guy that we saw in the last video. So yeah, in both formats this is gonna be a good 2-drop. Gonna be a major role player to make Life Force good enough. Alright, that's it once again for this Eternal News video with the latest spoiler dump. Since they're picking up the pace on dumping spoilers on us, I expect set to earliest next week, Thursday, the patch day, but probably more likely the week after, so that they can do some announcement stuff and dump all the spoilers, because till next Thursday it might be a bit tight for all the spoilers, but we'll see. Maybe we get lucky and get it next Thursday already, but more realistically I expect Thursday in 2 weeks. Alright. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content and want to support me. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.